Ask yourself this question: would you ever attempt to drive on this highway? A highway with almost no guardrails and very little shoulder room. And in fact, if you were to lose control and go over the edge, you could be plummeting down as far as 1,000 feet. And even if you somehow survived the initial impact, there's always the possibility of your car rolling into the icy cold river below. And if you're not out of your car before it hits the river, it could very well be your last ride. Crazy enough though, there is people that take this highway almost every day, and they could probably do it with their eyes closed, although I wouldn't recommend it. Our journey starts here, in the beautiful little mountain town of Uray, Colorado, and in the rest of today's video, we are going to attempt to drive the most petrifying part of the $1,000,000 highway, and hopefully make it back. I'm also going to tell you a little bit about the history and show you some of the amazing things I found along the way. The $1,000,000 Highway is a 25-mile stretch of road in southwest Colorado. It goes from the town of Uray to the town of Silverton, and we're going to be focusing on the first 5 miles coming out of Uray, as it's the scariest part of the entire drive, and hopefully we make it through without ending up like the O'Doyles in Billy Madison. You get the idea. We kicked off our journey right in the heart of Uray. It was quite inspiring to drive down Main Street and see all the Victorian-style buildings with the view of the San Juan Mountains in the background. And in fact, most of these buildings date back to the late early 1900s. And as soon as we made our way into town, that's when we started to make our way out of town and up the $1,000,000 Highway. We started things off by making our way through a few mild switchbacks, and then past the famous Switzerland of America lookout point. And we'll come back to that later on in the video. Shortly after that, it didn't take much longer for the drive to get interesting. And if you focus your attention to the right side of the road, you can see just how little shoulder room there was. Now, I've been on some pretty daunting roads in the past, but none quite like this. The scary drives, if you will, that I've done either had guardrails or enough shoulder room that kind of gave you that boost of confidence and comfort to make it through the drive with little worry. But knowing that 2 feet past the white line was a direct descent to the bottom of the canyon, that made my skin crawl just a little bit. After a few minutes of a nerve-wracking drive that almost made me want to become a full-time cigarette smoker again, I saw a pullout area up ahead and decided to check it out. After I got done chasing waterfalls and taking in the glorious views, I hopped back into my car and continued up the road, and this is where my stomach really started to drop. I'm not kidding, I was gripping that steering wheel about as tight as I was clenching my cheeks, and every second on that road seemed like an eternity. Knowing that just a few feet from the right side of my vehicle were the exposed cliff edges and steep drop-offs to the rugged canyon down below did not help. Some parts of the highway did have quite a bit of shoulder room and the drop-offs weren't so steep, but parts like this, if you went over the edge, it would be a hard slam into the loose rock down below, and a cold plunge into the Uncompahgre River. Luckily for me, I was able to keep my composure and I was determined to carry on. After all, we already made it this far. We're not gonna bitch out now. A few questions I started to ask myself as we continued on with the drive was, whose bright idea was it to put this highway on the edge of a mountain? When was it built? And how exactly did it get its name? The $1,000,000 Highway, more formally known as US Highway 550, dates all the way back to the late 1800s. It was built between the years of 1882 and 1883 by Otto Mears and Fred Walson. It was originally built as a wagon road connecting Uray to the town of Silverton, and at the time it cost $10,000 per square mile to construct, which is why Mr. Mears charged a toll for those that traveled his road. However, in time, ownership of the road was eventually transferred over to the state government. It turns out the local miners and merchants were getting pretty pissed off about having to pay the ridiculous tolls. Fun fact, here's an old photo of where tolls had to be paid, and this is also the location of Bear Creek Falls, the waterfall that we saw earlier in the video. Here is another old photo of travelers taking the $1 Million Highway by wagon. After seeing this photo, it got me thinking, what do you think would be scarier, taking the old narrow road by wagon or taking the road as it is today? If you ask me, I would say it's probably scarier traveling it today. I mean, if you think about it, back in the late early 1900s, things like sports cars, trucks, motorcycles, and just your average car didn't necessarily exist. Therefore, less risk of people being idiots and hot dogging it on the road. But then again, there's this guy.
That was pretty amazing, although very stupid at the same time. I don't get it.
And now for the $1 Million question. How exactly did the highway get its name? Well, according to Durango.org, the true origin of its name is unknown, but there are many theories as to how the name came about. The first one is it got its name due to the $1 Million views around every corner. The second theory is locals joked around and said they would only drive this section of the road if someone paid them $1 million because of the steep grades, winding turns, often being in avalanche paths, and the lack of guardrails. And the final theory is allegedly each mile on the $1 Million Highway cost $1 million to build.
I didn't realize that the creek was so close by. Don't want to get hit by a car here. So we're gonna go check out this gold water because it looks amazing.
Here's a fun fact for you. The color of the Uncompahgre River varies throughout the seasons, and the reason for the gold yellowish color is due to the amount of metal concentrations mixed with snowmelt. And the word Uncompahgre is a Ute Indian word which translates to dirty water. There definitely was a sigh of relief once I made it out of the Uncompahgre Gorge. I was able to relax a little bit and enjoy the views without worrying about falling off the edge every 5 seconds. I continued on through the mountains, and the further I went, I was able to capture more of those $1 Million views, and gain a little bit of insight into the region's mining history. The area that you see here was founded by gold and silver miners in the 1870s. This 17 square mile area produced 4 million ounces of gold, 21 million ounces of silver, and 12 million tons of lead, zinc, and copper. One of the interpretive signs here even said that there is nearly 100 miles of underground tunnels in these mountains. And this track that you see in the frame here is known as Treasury Tunnel. Miners would enter here and ride the underground trams to their workstations.
Real quick, I just want to say this is not the end of the video, but I think what we're going to do now is we're going to turn around because I do believe we've made it through the most intimidating part of the $1 Million Highway. Now, I could be wrong. I know this highway goes on for many, many, many more miles yet, but in the interest of time, I'm only here for about another day and a half, and I do have a couple other activities planned. So if you guys want me to come back another time and check out the rest of the $1 Million Highway, let me know in the comments section down below. But for right now, we're gonna head back down the mountain and I'm gonna give you guys that perspective. And we're also gonna check out a few I saw some abandoned mining buildings and some pretty cool waterfalls, so let's get going. Made another stop coming down the mountain here. I found 1, 2, 3 abandoned buildings. I'm assuming that they had something to do with the mining that went on up here. But we're gonna poke around, walk inside, see if we can learn a little bit more about them. We got one building here, and then we got a bigger building right here, and then it looks like there's a little shed back there. Let's see what's inside. Or not. That floor does not look too sturdy by any means. Yeah, we're not walking in there. This is super flimsy. Fragile. Yeah, no shit. Actually, that does not feel too safe, so I'm gonna hop down. No trespassing. Keep out. We won't go in. But we're sure as heck gonna zoom in here. Who knows how far that actually goes in. This reminds me of that old mine / mill that I found near Area 51. If you guys want to see that video, I'll put that one down in the description. Well, it looks like we're probably not going to be able to get down to that one. It is completely surrounded by water. I tried right there, but there's a bunch of water underneath that snow, and now my left foot is a little wet and cold. Best we can do is zoom in. My guess is this is probably just a cabin for one of the workers of the mine.
According to an interpretive sign on one of the buildings, this was the Larson Brothers Mine. It was purchased in 1933, and the property consisted of a flotation mill, bunkhouse, blacksmith shop, and a small snow shed over the entrance to the mine. And if it tickles your fancy, feel free to pause the video and read the sign in its entirety.
That view would never get old. Check out what we got here. What do you guys think this was? Judging by how old it is and these garage doors, I would say this is probably a service station that was probably regularly used by all the trucks and vehicles that used to come up here during the glory days of the mining. Looks like we got another little building over here. No trespassing. All right, well, we won't. But that doesn't mean we can't zoom in for a closer look. What do you guys think this one was? Does kind of have that little schoolhouse look, but it almost looks too small. I'm sure it was somehow tied to the service garage in one way or another. That was our last little stop here, so now we're gonna head back down the $1 Million Highway, hopefully in one piece.
Now, coming back down through the gorge wasn't nearly as intimidating as going up. Not being on the cliffside did make it a little less nerve-wracking. However, it is a drive not to be taken lightly. I had it pretty easy compared to the stories some of the locals shared with me. I struck up a conversation with a couple at Bear Creek Falls, and they had asked me about my experience driving on the $1 Million Highway. I had told them that my heart was racing like a coke addict at an afterbar, but those majestic views of the San Juan Mountains was worth every second. They proceeded to tell me that as hard as it may be to believe, people take that highway every day, whether it's sunny, cloudy, windy, rainy, snowy, and even when there's ice on the road. And every once in a while they do have the unfortunate vehicle that goes over the edge. And according to thetravel.com, with over 400 deaths since 1992, it remains one of the most dangerous highways in the United States.
I got a feeling there's going to be a lot of stairs here today. There's more stairs.
So before I started my descent down the mountains, I decided to check the weather. I saw on the news earlier that morning that a storm was supposed to be rolling in right around the same time I had planned to leave. Even though it was mostly sunny and blue skies with a few patches of clouds the majority of the morning, the weather soon took a dark turn. But luckily, I got back into Uray just before the storm made its appearance. I had just enough time to get my drone up in the air and capture a few clips of the stunning Cascade Falls. And on a side note, if you are ever in the little town of Uray and you're looking for a great place to grab a burger and a beer with rooftop views of the mountains, I would recommend stopping in at the Uray Brewery. Unless, of course, you have a drinking problem and you cause chaos wherever you go. But then again, I'm not your dad. Okay, goodbye.